The Sunday brunch table at the Whitmore estate glittered with polished silver and imported flowers that cost more than most families spend on groceries in a week. Elena Whitmore sat in her usual seat, the chair closest to the kitchen, positioned conveniently for serving. "Elena, more coffee," her mother, Margaret Whitmore, said without looking up from her phone. "And use the French press this time." "Of course, Mom," Elena replied softly. Across the table, her older brother Adrian adjusted his expensive cufflinks. "So, Elena's still working at that credit union." "I'm a loan officer at Regional Federal Credit Union," she corrected gently. Adrian smirked. "Right. While you're approving car loans, I just closed a $3 million development deal." Lillian laughed into her mimosa. "You have an economics degree and work at a credit union." "It's embarrassing." Their father, Charles Whitmore, added coldly, "At 32, you should be building wealth." Elena stayed quiet. Then Margaret brightened. "We made a decision about your finances." A chill ran down Elena's spine. "That savings account you opened years ago," her father continued. "We invested it. Adrian has a luxury condo project. Your $184,000 is part of the family stake." Elena froze. "You took my money." "We invested it," Adrian corrected. "You'll see 20% returns," Charles added. "I didn't agree to that," Elena said quietly. "You didn't have to," Margaret smiled. "I'm co-signer." The conversation ended like a business deal. Papers signed. Funds transferred. Elena cleared the table silently. 7 years of careful saving. Gone. Here is part 2, approximate 400 words, continuing the story in English with the changed names. #part 2, the truth behind the account. Silence filled the line after Elena finished explaining. "Tell me this isn't the executive account," Agent Claire Donovan finally said. "It is," Elena replied quietly. "The one ending in 4821. Claire exhaled slowly. "Elena, that account receives your classified federal compensation." "Yes." "And your family transferred the entire balance into a private development company." "Yes." Another pause, heavier this time. "Elena, that's theft of federal funds." "That's a felony." "Multiple felonies." "I know." "Do they know who you actually work for?" "No," Elena said. "They think I'm just a loan officer at a credit union." Claire's tone shifted from concern to control urgency. "You're the Deputy Director of Financial Operations at the Federal Reserve Special Security Division. You oversee billion-dollar investigations. That account is flagged as a protected federal asset." Elena leaned against the kitchen counter. "I never told them." "Why?" "Because I wanted them to respect me without the title," she admitted. "I wanted to see if they could value me without being impressed. And now I know the answer." Claire didn't soften her words. "The moment that transfer happened, alerts triggered at Treasury, Federal Reserve Security, and the Financial Intelligence Network. A joint task force will open automatically." Elena closed her eyes. "So it's already started?" "Yes." "What happens next?" "You file a formal complaint. We take your statement. Then we execute search warrants." "They're my family," Elena whispered. "And they accessed a protected executive account and transferred federal property without authorization," Claire replied firmly. "Family doesn't exempt anyone from federal law." Elena thought about 7 years of Sunday brunches. The dismissals. The laughter. The assumption she was incompetent. "I want to proceed," she said calmly. You're sure? Yes. Then come to the Treasury office at 9 a.m., bring documentation. After the call ended, Elena stared at her reflection in the dark kitchen window. They thought she was timid. They thought she didn't understand money. By morning, they would understand exactly who she was. Here is part 3, approximate 400 words, continuing the story, #part 3. The investigation begins Monday morning. Elena Whitmore walked into the Treasury building downtown with calm, measured steps. The glass doors reflected a woman who looked composed, not someone whose family had just triggered a federal investigation. Agent Claire Donovan was waiting near security. Coffee first, Claire said, handing her a cup. Then we deal with the felony. They moved into a private office. The blinds were half drawn, the atmosphere controlled and serious. Tell me everything again, Claire said, activating the recorder. Elena described the brunch conversation in detail, her mother's casual tone, her father's certainty, Adrian's confidence. She explained the cosigner access, the unauthorized transfer, the development company. When she finished, Claire leaned back. Your primary salary as deputy director is $187,000 annually, she said. Your classified compensation, approximately $2,200 monthly after taxes, was deposited into that secondary account. Over 7 years, that matches the $184,000 transferred. Elena nodded. That account is coded as a protected executive asset, Claire continued. When it was drained, automatic alerts triggered in 3 agencies. Treasury Fraud Division, FBI Financial Crimes Unit, Federal Reserve Security. So this isn't just about me, Elena said quietly. No. If someone can access and empty a federal executive account without authorization, it's considered a potential national security vulnerability. Claire turned her monitor toward her. As of this morning, a joint investigation is active. Your brother's company, Whitmore Riverside Development LLC, is under review. Bank accounts are being flagged. Elena felt a strange mix of calm and inevitability. What happens next? Search warrants. Asset freezes. Interviews. And yes, Claire added carefully, your family will learn your real position. Elena inhaled slowly. I'm ready. The formal statement took nearly 2 hours. Every detail recorded. Every timeline confirmed. As Elena stepped outside the building, her phone vibrated. Adrian. She answered. Elena, something weird is happening, he said, his voice tight. The bank froze the development account. They mentioned a federal investigation. Do you know anything about this? Yes, she replied evenly. What do you mean yes? I reported a theft. Silence. You stole federal funds, Adrian. That's impossible, he said sharply. You work at a credit union. I work there 2 days a week, Elena corrected. My real job is Deputy Director of Financial Operations at the Federal Reserve. Another long silence. You should call a lawyer, she added calmly, and ended the call. Here is part 4, approximate 400 words, continuing the story, #part 4. The search warrant 3 black federal SUVs rolled into the circular driveway of the Whitmore estate just after noon. Elena stood beside Agent Claire Donovan as uniformed agents approached the front door. The house looked as immaculate as ever, pristine stone exterior, manicured hedges, the quiet confidence of generational wealth. Margaret Whitmore opened the door, dressed in tennis whites. Elena. What is this? She asked, confusion turning quickly into irritation as she noticed the agents behind her. Claire stepped forward, holding up her credentials. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Special Agent Claire Donovan with the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Division. We have a federal warrant to search this property and seize documents related to account number ending in 4821 and Whitmore Riverside Development LLC." Margaret's face drained of color. Charles Whitmore appeared behind her, still holding his golf gloves. "What is going on?" Another agent stepped forward. "Mr. Whitmore, we're investigating unauthorized access to a protected federal banking account and potential wire fraud." "Wire fraud?" Charles's voice rose sharply. "This is ridiculous. Elena, what did you do?" "I reported a crime," Elena said calmly. "You accessed my account without permission and transferred $184,000 in federal executive compensation." Margaret shook her head weakly. "Federal, what?" "I'm Deputy Director of Financial Operations at the Federal Reserve," Elena said steadily. "The account you emptied was flagged as protected federal property." The words seemed to echo in the doorway. Adrian's car screeched into the driveway minutes later. He stepped out, pale and furious. "This can't be happening," he muttered as agents began carrying out computers and file boxes. Lillian arrived shortly after, eyes wide with disbelief. "You called federal agents on your own family." "I reported theft," Elena corrected. "That's not drama. That's law." Charles's attorney rushed in, suit immaculate but expression strained. He scanned the warrant quickly. "You're saying we can return the funds immediately?" he asked Agent Donovan. "The funds will be recovered," Claire replied coolly. "But repayment does not erase criminal liability. Unauthorized access to a protected federal account is a serious offense." Agents moved efficiently through the house, photographing documents, freezing financial accounts electronically. By 6 p.m., the estate felt different, smaller, exposed. As Elena turned to leave, Claire spoke quietly beside her. "Wire fraud alone carries up to 20 years. Elena didn't flinch. "For the first time," she said softly, "they're facing consequences instead of controlling the narrative." And for the first time in years, she felt steady. Here is part 5, approximate 400 words, continuing the story. Part 5, the arraignment Thursday morning, the federal courthouse felt colder than Elena expected. Margaret, Charles, and Adrian Whitmore stood before a federal magistrate, their expensive lawyers at their sides. The confidence they once wore like armor had been replaced with visible strain. The charges were read clearly: unauthorized access to a protected federal account, wire fraud, theft of federal property, receipt of stolen federal funds. The words echoed through the courtroom. Bail was set, $250,000 for Charles, $150,000 for Margaret, and $200,000 for Adrian. Charles paid it immediately, writing a check before the development accounts were fully frozen. Even now, he tried to solve everything with money. Outside in the courthouse hallway, he approached Elena. He looked older. Smaller. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long have you worked for the Federal Reserve?" 7 years, Elena replied. "Since I graduated." Margaret stared at her. 7 years. "I completed my master's degree in financial regulatory policy while working undercover," Elena continued. "I was recruited directly into special operations." "You have a master's degree?" Lillian whispered. "You never asked," Elena said calmly. Adrian stepped forward, his usual arrogance gone. "The U.S. attorney offered a plea deal. Reduced charges. Full restitution. Probation instead of prison. That's wise, Elena said. Charles looked at her carefully. If we take it, would you advocate for leniency? Elena held his gaze. That depends. On what? On whether you understand what you did was wrong beyond the legal consequences. Margaret began to cry softly. We thought we were helping. You thought I was incapable, Elena corrected gently. You violated my autonomy. You treated me like something to manage, not someone to respect. Silence hung between them. I'm not interested in revenge, Elena continued. I'm interested in change. Real accountability. If you truly understand that what you did was theft, and not a misunderstanding, then I'll consider asking for leniency. Adrian swallowed hard. We'll take the plea. 2 weeks later, the agreement was finalized. Reduced charges. Full repayment of $184,000 plus interest. 2 years of probation. Community service. Mandatory family counseling. The money returned to Elena's account within 3 days. But the real cost wasn't financial. It was pride. Reputation. Control. And for the first time, the power dynamic had shifted, permanently. Here is part 6, approximate 400 words, continuing the story, #part 6, breaking the pattern. The first family counseling session was tense. Dr. Emily Harper sat across from the Whitmore family in a quiet office with neutral walls and deliberate calm. No luxury. No status symbols. Just honesty. Let's begin with facts, Dr. Harper said evenly. Margaret and Charles, you accessed your daughter's account without permission and transferred $184,000. That is theft. Can you say that clearly? Margaret hesitated. Her hands trembled in her lap. We thought we were helping, she whispered. That's not what I asked, Dr. Harper replied gently but firmly. Can you state what you did? It took nearly 10 minutes. I stole from my daughter, Margaret finally said, tears streaming down her face. Dr. Harper nodded. Why? Because I didn't believe she could manage money, Margaret admitted. She lived modestly. She didn't flaunt success. I assumed that meant she wasn't successful. Elena sat quietly, listening. Dr. Harper turned to Charles. And you? Charles cleared his throat. I measure success by visible wealth. Real estate. Deals. Expansion. Elena didn't fit that mold. So I assumed she was underachieving. You didn't ask, Elena said softly. No, he admitted. We didn't. Adrian remained defensive for weeks. It wasn't until the 6th session that his voice cracked. I treated Elena like she was naive, he said slowly. Because if she was smarter or more accomplished than me, then what did that make me? Human, Dr. Harper replied. It made you someone whose self-worth was built on comparison. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't defensive. It was reflective. Months passed. Probation meetings. Community service. Counseling sessions that peeled back years of unspoken resentment and quiet superiority. One afternoon, Margaret asked Elena to lunch. No country club. No designer setting. Just a quiet restaurant downtown. I realized something, Margaret said carefully. When you didn't follow the script, wealthy husband, visible status, I didn't know how to define you. So I defined you as failing. That must have been hard to admit, Elena said. It was devastating, Margaret replied. but necessary. She reached across the table. I'm proud of you. Not because of your title, but because you stood your ground. Elena didn't promise forgiveness. But for the first time, she saw humility where there had once been control. And that was new. Here is part 7, approximate 400 words, concluding the story. Part 7, a different kind of wealth. 6 months after the arraignment, Elena received a call from Agent Claire Donovan. The U.S. Attorney's Office is closing the case, Claire said. Your family completed all plea requirements, restitution, probation compliance, counseling. If they maintain clean records, the convictions may be eligible for expungement in 3 years. That's good, Elena replied quietly. It is, Claire agreed. Most family financial crime cases end in permanent estrangement. Yours didn't. That's rare. That Sunday, Elena returned to the Whitmore estate for brunch for the first time in half a year. The table looked the same, polished silver, fresh flowers, but the atmosphere felt different. Quieter. Intentional. Before anyone began eating, Charles cleared his throat. I need to say something, he said, looking directly at Elena. I'm proud of you. Not for your title. Not for your salary. But for demanding respect when we failed to give it. Margaret nodded. We mistook modesty for mediocrity. That was our failure. Lillian spoke next. We never asked about your life because we thought we already understood it. You didn't, Elena said gently. But you're asking now. Adrian leaned forward. Can you tell us about your work? Whatever you're allowed to share. And so she did. She spoke about financial crime investigations, systemic banking risks, international coordination efforts. About protecting institutions from collapse. About safeguarding people who would never know her name. This time, they listened. Not with skepticism. Not with comparison. With genuine interest. After brunch, Elena drove back to her modest apartment, the one that had once been mocked as proof of failure. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and changed into comfortable clothes. She made tea, simple, ordinary tea, and sat on her second-hand couch with a book about international banking systems. Her phone buzzed. A text from Margaret, I love you, not for what you achieve, but for who you are. Elena read it twice. For years, she had chased validation she didn't need. It had taken a federal investigation, criminal charges, and months of painful honesty to rebuild what had been broken. But now, for the first time, her family saw her clearly. Not as the disappointing daughter. Not as someone to control. But as Elena Whitmore, capable, competent, and worthy of respect. And somehow, that felt like the greatest return on investment of all.